I see Bill right at the bottom.
Oh, great.
How are you, Rick?
Oh, there you are, Bill. Hey, Bill. Great.
Doing all right.
Great. Okay, so this is February 9th, 2022, 6:30 p.m. The Economic Development Commission call to order. We've got Bill Rankin, Samantha Hills, Matt Clark, Mike D'Amata, and we've got, is that it? That's it.
That's it.
Hey,
Oh, did I mention Cheryl? There you
no.
are, Cheryl Mitchell. Okay, so we've got a quorum. Is there anyone from the public available to speak to the commission? Hearing none. Approval of minutes. Cheryl, so you sent the minutes around. Thank you. Any comments on the minutes or corrections? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of January 12th, 2022.
Great. And Matt Clark
second that motion.
seconded.
Oh.
Matt beat you. Yeah, all in favor, raise their hands. Bill, I didn't see you. I'm assuming you're in favor.
I'm up. I agree.
Okay, good. So the minutes have been approved. We'll go on to old business now. So a discussion of the Special Development District. You know, I know Mike had proposed this before Planning and Zoning the other night, and I think they had a real positive reception to this kind of idea and theory, and they're planning a public hearing on it. And Mike, maybe you can take it away from there.
Sure. So the Special Development District public hearing is scheduled to be open, the P&Z's first meeting in March. We reviewed the draft and basically went through the major parts ahead of time, workshopped the language. It's been referred to CROG. So we'll be opening the hearing and hearing from the public at that point. I did send it out to a few contacts in the development community for a critical review based on the fact that these will be the users. And there were a couple of key comments that I think were very well stated. And so the review and the draft that we'll go over with them during the public hearing will have a couple of changes that I think are really necessary to align with what the market is doing and how these projects really need to be constructed. So I think it'll be a good process.
When was that meeting, Mike?
It will be Tuesday, March 1st. So that'll be when they open the hearing.
Do we have a copy of them, Mike, of the?
I can send, we did, yeah, I don't know if I should at the last meeting or when, but I can send you a copy of the sort of latest revision, which incorporates the changes that I've made after receiving some of those comments. So the P&Z, we haven't discussed it with them yet, but I can send that to you if you want.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, I think we would all like to look at it. And if we had any comments or testimony before planning and zoning, we could certainly provide that. Yep, good. Any questions? I mean, it's really, you know, maybe the second or last phase of what we're kind of thinking about as far as zoning regulations, you know. We've worked on the design commercial district. We've worked on the South Willington Village. You know, now we've got this special development district, you know, that we can kind of move around in town where it's appropriate. And I think in response to this work we've done, we've had a lot of development interest and activity. In the last few months, you've seen a couple of properties get sold in town, and we're going to talk about one on the next agenda item. Any comments from the commission?
Good progress.
Okay, great. So, Bill, you're up on the railroad project. So I guess F&F Concrete has purchased a piece of property.
Yeah, I guess now we can understand why Phil was a little moving sideways there for a while. He apologized, and I said there was no need for that. I understand the confidentiality in these discussions. He sold the property to F&F Concrete. They're a fourth generation concrete company located in Plantsville, Connecticut. It's owned by a couple, Lauren Forgione. She pronounces it Forgione. When I said it Forgione, she said, "You must be a New York City boy." I said, "Yeah, I am." And she's 37 years old. We met down at the site, talked a little bit about her plans going forth, filled her in on some of the benefits of working with the Economic Development Group, which she welcomes. Her plans, I asked her point blank, I said, "Are you going to sell the property to pay for the acquisition, or do you want to develop it?" And she says, "No, I want to develop it." Part of that will be to bring in raw materials for her business. A lot of the raw materials that go into concrete are Canadian origin. And she's interested, because right now she's getting a lot of her product for the Plantsville location for the projects that they have down around New Milford, Connecticut. So she's looking at that as a possible opportunity for the acquisition as well as the development of it. So I think it was a welcome discussion, and she would like to meet the town. But before we get into the specifics of that, I'm meeting with Lauren at her Plantsville location next Wednesday, which will be the 16th. And representatives from the railroad, Ed Foley and myself, will be visiting her at her site to discuss rail opportunities. Ed is very in tune with the aggregate market as well as the construction market in the Northeast, and he's looking forward to those discussions. So I believe it's a good marriage. And the next thing, she would like to meet the town, but she asked us to kind of set the stage, and I'll throw that out. What would be the best way to introduce her to the town?
Have her call me.
Yeah, I think that's a good start. You know, she can call Mike. Mike can make introductions to the planning office and probably the selectman's office. And I think that's a good start. And we'll see where that leads. Well, thank you, Bill. I think that's great news. You know, I think you're going to see a significant bump up on the grand list. I mean, this year's grand list increased by 3%, about $400,000. It's a big increase in Willington. It's going to really help us. And I think this will also. That's really good news.
Yeah, good start.
Yeah. I think so.
Bill, one of the things that I think would be helpful to ascertain from her, and I'm happy to do that if and when I ever hear from her or I talk with her, but if we get to a point where, based on their plans for the property, we need to start looking at trying to find a capable, competent, reliable developer, somebody who is you know, in this business, I guess just let me know that. I know someone who would be very interested in this type of a project, a very competent development group with experience in Connecticut.
I
And
agree.
they are not sort of the traditional lumbering beast that wants, a site that checks boxes. And if it's a little bit funky or unique, they shy away. I think they might be a good person to put in the hands of FNF. So we can make that connection
Sure.
if they get to that point.
Well, we were going to go down that road anyhow, Mike, you know.
Well, that's what, yeah. So that's why I started. And then you said, big news, he's selling the property. And I put my phone down and I thought, I don't want to read the rest of this email. But so good.
No, I think if we can not only introduce that intelligence or that experience, and then we have the rail working with her with their engineering group, I think that's a good way to breathe some fresh air into it. You know, it's a good package, really is. Yeah. And one other thing, the property is officially on the website of the Genesee and Wyoming Railroad with all the new contacts associated with FNF.
Great news, Bill. Thank you so much. You can let her know that Willington Day is coming up. I mean, maybe they can have a little, table or something, with a small sign. So that would be a good way to kind of meet and greet.
I'll mention that next week.
Sounds good. Okay, so we'll move off of the railroad project. Samantha Hills has got some breaking news on the American Recovery Act.
Hi. So I've attended 2 meetings for the American Rescue Plan Act, and basically, I'm not sure what you want me to report on per se, but representing the EDC, I initially at the first meeting did ask for what we had talked about, $300K for. I said for $5,000 mini grants to businesses. Mike, you had said the other day that we had talked about up to 15,000. That might have been at a meeting that I wasn't here, so I'm sorry, guys, because I didn't know that part. So basically, things are moving a little slow as we kind of expected, but I will say they're moving a little faster than I thought they might move. We'll have to see what happens at the next meeting. We're skipping the 21st and going to the 28th. I think it's the 21st. We're skipping the next one. So it will be 3 weeks in between, but it's kind of strange because they're looking for requests. So they're taking requests already, and then they were like, maybe lay them all out and look at the requests and weigh the requests, but there's not really a scale by which we're weighing the requests. So it's a little disjointed. If you ask me, my suggestion, I wrote a memo that I submitted. I think it's fine to share it with this group as well, but it was just saying that I thought that because there's 5 overarching categories, pulling out what we cannot take as revenue loss, because the new rules, the final rule allows you to take up to $10 million unrestricted, and we were awarded 1.7. So we can take the entire thing as revenue loss, but it can create problems. Like with premium pay, it would create a problem. Then I thought the premium pay was only for like back pay or for pandemic related, but they're saying if the person is taking premium pay, then maybe they have to work it into the budget. So there are more considerations, because I thought technically we could even take EDC as revenue loss and do a one-time funding, as we are funded by the town. But I still thought that would be too slow. So my recommendation was to take human services and businesses off the top, because the other categories are broadband, sewer and water, which I did approach, but we can't, it's just 1.7 won't touch the problems that we need to address. And then there was, I don't remember the other one, revenue loss. And I think I wrote about it and I don't remember what it is. Mike might remember what it is, but it doesn't matter as much. It's something that we're not going to do. And oh, it is premium pay. Premium pay is its own whole category. So I was addressing the category that was COVID related expenses. So the individual households and businesses, hoping that we could sort of earmark an amount and then take the rest as revenue loss, and all the discussions that need to take place about what's valued, what's more important, what's more COVID related. I mean, it's basically fairly subjective because we can't, get into like a causal inference measurement. So hoping that we may do that approach. It seemed like Erica was kind of down with that. She was saying like, yes, she thought that these were important. So I just made the case that businesses are important, that they need money yesterday, and people need money, families. So 300,000 is 18%. I don't think it's a lot, but I think it's a lot, but I'm saying it's not, I don't feel like it's outside of the realm of what's an important expense. But what they would like to see us put together is a formal request. So even though there's no exact form for the request that hasn't been developed yet, we still need to kind of say what it's about. Mike had all of the items that we had discussed, because these are the questions. I'm sorry, I'm saying that wrong. The questions that we're talking about putting on the form are: who's requesting the money? How will the money be managed? Are there other ways that we could fund? Are there other funding sources or ways to fund this project or whatever it might be? In many cases, it is a project. What the description of the project, the funding amount requested, any long-term expenses, like as I mentioned, they would have to get worked into the budget, which is not with this. Does it meet the final rule, and has it been requested before? So we can answer most of those easily. The only thing that the feedback that I got on the questions, I didn't write down, Mike, what you had gone through. Mike had explained what had been discussed and been decided here in terms of the types of questions that we would ask the businesses. The only feedback that I got that they would like to see is that we follow up with them, that there be an accountability. How did they spend the money? That they would have to demonstrate to us that they actually did spend it the way that they said, or that it was on a COVID related expense. Somebody had made the comment of, we want to make sure they don't go on vacation. So I didn't know if that was something that we had discussed. I also do not know what type of reporting they do have to do, money coming down, reporting going back up. I don't know the level of the reporting, because that would not be taken under the revenue loss category, which has minimal reporting. So I hope that made sense. I hope it flowed pretty well. I kind of went rabbit trails, so I do that.
Thank you, Samantha. No, that's great. I think that was comprehensive. Mike, did you have any comments on what Samantha had just presented?
So we have, I think you all probably saw, and we can share again, we have basically the narrative application, which talks about the purpose, eligibility, requirements, and terms, which I think outlines most of what the commission is going to require. I know I did an informal memo to the Board of Selectmen when we first developed this,
right,
which we could always wrap into a more narrative request if necessary. But I think that, she pretty much covered it. And basically, I guess to flesh out a little bit of what she talked about with coming up with a list, I know one of the things that I am struggling with in being on the commission is, I don't know, one of the examples is, the CIP has submitted $473,000 worth of projects and saying, let's fund them through ARPA instead of CIP. Well, I don't know, very honestly, I don't know if I think $473,000 of CIP makes sense until I know what else we're considering. It's hard for me to get behind a proposal when I don't know all of it. So we're as a commission struggling with, do we allocate certain amount of money up front for more emergent stuff and then look at the requests? How do we get comfortable there? But I've been working with Christina, who's the chair, Milos, and we've got the form pretty much ready to go. We can share with the commission and get that moving so we can get these requests ASAP.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, Matt,
I
go
just
ahead.
want to say that I know, Matt, you are waiting. I want to say that
Go ahead.
473,000 is 28% of the money
Yep.
for 5
Yep.
projects. So that is, to me, is a harder commitment.
When are the meetings? I didn't know there were any, so.
They are, I don't know if we went to monthly or every other week, but they're on Mondays.
What time?
It's Monday, every other week at 1:30. And
So 1:30.
it's every other week's,
So 1:30 p.m. when all the townspeople are working and can't attend is when we have the meetings for the.
well, there are going to
committee,
be,
and therefore they're unable to attend or comment or speak or anything like that.
let me speak to that, Matt.
Sure.
Well, for one thing, the meeting would be, it is every other week. So it'll be the 24th, 7th. Like I said, we're skipping the 21st. So it's going to the 28th, and then it'll be again the 7th of the 21st, if anyone did want to put it on their calendar. At first I did definitely agree with what you said. I think that was for ease because of like many of the people who are on the committee actually work for the town and they're all there. But one of the things that committee has discussed is that there will be, after we take more of the requests, as Mike had mentioned. I agree with you, Mike. It's hard to like take everything. It's just as a member of the EDC and as representing the EDC, I need to advocate for at least some of the portion to be pulled aside. I think that's fair. They maybe they'll compromise with it and just do some now and some later. That's a possibility if it's something that needs to happen to get them to release some of the funds. But anyway, there will be public, I don't want to call it hearing, but they're talking about doing a presentation that clearly lays out our criterion for how we are judging and how we're asking the agency to demonstrate COVID related like revenue loss or loss. And so there is something that's going to happen, and it was talked about being at several times. So one at night, one during the day, one on the weekend. So those will be widely publicized. I think that, which is not just a separate issue, but people who aren't that involved aren't getting town emails. I don't know how to up that, get people more interested. I feel like it might be useful to have other forms of communication, going out, but that's outside of the realm of my powers. I don't work for the town, but I definitely think that there are other forms. You get a lot of people ignore their emails. I mean, even like old-fashioned posters and things like that, sign on the town green about these meetings that are coming up, are all things that I think could potentially get more people to come out. But at the same time, it needs to be clear to the public, because just because we can take the money as revenue loss doesn't mean that we're going to, clean up like somebody's street or transfer, like you could, but we're still trying to weigh as a commission. We're still trying to make sure that the money's actually getting used what it's supposed to get used for. So that it's not just buying, a new something or other that somebody wants. And that's why I believe they put those check questions in there about, has it been requested before? And are there other funding sources, to kind of give an internal check about whether or not it was really COVID related.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sam. You're the perfect member for that board. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so, Mike and I had a discussion about the South Willington Village infrastructure. There's no sewer there, there's no water there. And just to allow Samantha to pull her hair out, I don't know if this would be American Rescue Act money too, but we would like to maybe do a limited study on water in the South Willington Village District. And maybe you could flesh that out a bit, Mike, for us.
Yeah, so I guess without getting too deep in the weeds or getting too far ahead on specific details, what I'll say is, as we've talked about before, there are a number of projects sort of in the hopper here in town. and they have interest in, of course, water and sewer. We don't have sewer, but there is water near enough by. So some of these folks would be willing to run the water line from certain distances, let's say, based on their project and what the costs are. But it looks like from where it will need to come, there's going to be a gap in sort of bringing that to the point where they can then make sense of running it. So last week I met with the folks, I think he's like the vice president of service, I don't know what he's called at Connecticut Water. And we talked about all of these different things. And Connecticut Water is working on a capacity analysis, if you will, and is going to give me a report on their ability to serve and provide water to basically the Route 32 corridor. This is important for a number of reasons, but we're not sure based on some of the topography. They have to check their capacities and pressure, et cetera. But the goal would be to give me something that would allow them to confirm that they could basically get water to the park on River Road. That would be the terminus of where we would at least want to confirm it could get to. So I should have information from them in about a week. And that would specifically look at bringing water basically out of Tolland on 195 up the 32 corridor into South Willington, past the mill, past Desiato, into West Willington, and down 32 towards the highway. There are a number of sites there that this would be a significant development plus, if you will. So I'm hopeful that we can get some positive news from them on that.
Can I ask you a question of you, Rick?
Go right ahead, Samantha.
So with the information that he's just given, so you're asking for money to research it. Can you clarify what it was? And I just wanted to say that I did bring up to the committee because, we had talked about that and representing this commission. I brought it up to the commission that would be the only other thing. Actually, Robin Campbell brought it up, and she said, we've been trying to bring businesses in, something. I mean, water was an issue, and I said, well, that was my segue in. But to the actual process of bringing in the water or whatever, going that deep would be more than that expense. But a study may be something I, could do. I would suggest that it's the same process that we should have something ready for the 21st. We should email them something, a request, whether it be about the mini grants, about this water study. We should have both of those proposals ready, answering those questions that I had mentioned. And I just thought that it may be a worthy discussion for us then to address now, or because we're not going to have another meeting, how we plan to follow up with the businesses, how we plan to audit them. I don't know, we need to go a deep audit, but because seems like that will be a deciding factor in the other part of it as well. The other approval of it or it getting pushed forward. And then how much money do you want for this limited study on water?
It's great. So we don't really know. I mean, so it might
Okay.
even be premature. It might be in jest that I say that it is appropriately, placed on your agenda. I'm not so sure that's the case. Because, Mike is really in preliminary talks with Connecticut Water. We don't know what the extent of this might look like. At some point in time, we might need some engineering work. We might need some site development stuff. We might need a study. But you think that's about right, Mike? Or let me know do you have other thoughts?
Yeah, well, so what the challenging part with all this is the timing, chicken and the egg. If the capacity is there, the struggle with trying to compete for money and deal with this through the town is that grants and stuff take so long. Connecticut Water can't partner with a private entity because they're a utility. So it's not like they can work with development community and say, you pay for 4 miles and we'll pay for 1 mile. And then Connecticut Water says, great, we're getting 5 miles for the cost of 1. Even though that's logical, they can't do that. So the trick is going to be trying to figure out and identify if there's funding sources, whether it be grants, whatever, loans, I don't know, like ASAP. Because if the capacity is there, I think we're going to have to come up with an answer for how we close that gap by May, April. Like, I suspect that if we can determine capacity and the P&Z approves this zone change or special development reg, within 30 days, we're going to see an application for a commercial project. It's just a matter of, do they design for one or the other? So we have to find that answer like ASAP.
So what would it be that you would need to find that answer? I mean, is it money? Is it time? Is it what is it?
It may just be depending on how complicated and how much info we can get out of Connecticut Water. It may just be horsepower in trying to look through all the various opportunities for funding sources and looking at eligibility and trying to check off what works and what doesn't. I did use some Connecticut Water information, which was about 1.5 years old, and priced out if we wanted to extend the water line just to connect from where the water comes out of Tolland, and if we ran it up 32 to basically the tavern, because that would connect the mill buildings and the tavern, and just create some of the expansion in the opposite direction, because the water line already comes down Depot and runs south to the school. And using rough numbers based on their estimates, running it roughly 900 linear feet, you're looking at conservatively at $350,000. So for us to try to close the gap with ARPA, we would need everything that the town got, because you got to design it too. So I'm hoping we can get some grant money.
Okay. I mean, obviously we can't, and we're kind of a little bit late to the party. And we don't know enough specifics about the request, what it would look like, what the need is, and all of that. Any comments, questions from the commission?
I have no idea about water or anything like that, Michael, but I was just curious. Right by my house here, there's been a water line moved in a couple 100 yards away. And I was wondering who paid for that, if you know. I'm on Burt Latham. There's 2 apartment complexes, and they brought the water in. Who paid for that moving from where the water was to up to where it is now?
I think that was a little bit of a different story, because I think that complex had failing wells.
It did.
So they may have been able to get money for that. The Connecticut Water may have included that in their. Connecticut Water basically creates a CIP plan just like a town, and they include a certain amount of money per year, and so they may have planned for that. It came out of Mansfield. I don't know about who wrote the check, but I could find out.
No, it's not that. I was just curious. That's all. Thanks. I appreciate it, Michael.
So Mike, for planning purposes, do we have any action items that we can take? What do you think?
One thing that I was thinking, and we'd have to hash it out, or I guess, circle back before the next ARPA meeting, would basically be EDC knows that they're looking for $300,000. That gives you enough money to fund roughly 60 grants to town businesses. I don't think you're going to have 60 business applications based on the eligibility and everything else. So I'm thinking, if we can think through what it is that the commission might need, and it connects to ARPA, maybe you still make a $300,000 request to ARPA, but a portion of that be allocated for another use if the business community doesn't submit grants in the full amount. So if we disperse $280,000 and we have 20,000 left, then maybe we take that and we implement that to some of these engineering type solutions if they're applicable.
The only problem I see with that is those are under two of those different broad categories. It will depend on how they have to report back to the state, because those two different things would fall under two different categories. One is the COVID related expense and one would be the sewer and water. So it all depends on their report, like how the allocation and reported, which I know you're on top of, because you said that, you're already sort of getting that information and putting it in a spreadsheet so that when the reporting comes up, we have our T's crossed already.
We could always ask them to sort of phase the allocation or the disbursement, right? So they could earmark 300,000, and then when we get through the business grants, we can say, hey, we're at 250, so we're going to return 40, but we want 10 so we can do a study related to X, Y, whatever it ultimately is. But my suspicion, based on how all these final rules and everything has changed, my suspicion is if it meets the requirements, I don't think there's going to be very much follow-up and reporting, because I don't see how any agency is going to be able to track all that.
Right.
But so I think it's just a matter of figuring out if we do have another potential eligible expense. And I can spend a little bit of time over the next week or so reviewing the rule and seeing how this would fit, and kind of, go from there. I could work with Rick, or we could correspond via email, or, whatever, to just kind of see if the commission is comfortable with how we land.
Do you need it right now, or can we wait till the next meeting, Mike? I mean, so obviously we'd like to encumber like 350,000 is the thought for business grants. And then if the grants are not all allocated, that we can then use it for other economic development use. But I think that's such a broad category right now. We don't really have definition. It would be really hard to get that, get that before the ARPA commission and ask them to do that. So, yeah. Samantha?
I just want to speak to the fact that we definitely need to have something. I would say, don't you agree, Mike, that we need to have something ready for the 21st? Some type of proposal. They even said that during the meeting. They're not going to vote on earmarking money off of the top, what I'm calling off the top of the potential to take the revenue loss amount, unless there's a proposal. And that's what I'm asking them to do, because there are these 5 broad, you guys understand what I'm saying, right? There's 5 categories. Once you take everything as revenue loss, we could fund, my road. I'd love to fund my road, but I'm not on the commission to do that. We can do anything we want as revenue loss. And that's where I feel like the commission's really going to come in as an agent to make sure that it is related. But from a legalistic standpoint, we don't need to be doing that. We could just do the whole thing as revenue loss. So they seemed to be, some members, I'll say, maybe not you, Mike, but I'm not, but some people seem to be okay with allocating funding that would, for things that could not be taken as revenue loss. Businesses, this category would be one of those. Sewer and water would be another one, but it's a separate category. So I am not in agreement. I do not think that we could say, hey, we want this much, unless we submit 2 different, requests. But I do think that we could submit a request for, say, 10% of the fund just right away, get that, see where that goes, and then submit later if we're spending it, or if there seems to be a need with the businesses. We could request the other, what did I say, was 18%, the other 8% later, either for businesses, or submit a separate type application for the sewer, as long as it hasn't been already decided, which I'm sure it won't be, to be taken as revenue loss. Does that make sense? So I would like to know what you guys want me to do. Do you want me to move forward and sort of not push, but just say, like, give us this 10%, because I think that I could get 10%. I could probably get it if it's a little bit smaller. 18% is nearly a fifth. That's 20%. I mean, it's a fifth, an entire fifth of the money. And I think what it comes down to is you've got people, you've got the human services, and it's human beings, and
Yep.
it's just a different thing, that brings up the emotions and, whatever. And then, not that it doesn't matter, but I'm saying it's more emotional. People are more emotional about that stuff than they are about business. And then, so maybe that would be helpful if we had a small business owner, we could share a story or something that might have happened. And then you have all of the emergency things when people are requesting, oh, what was the thing they wanted? Like air packs or something, like, yeah, you can't be like, no, we're not giving you air packs. I mean, those are important requests. So we don't want to end up taking so much and then not having money to fund something that's like life-saving.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I'm suggesting that if we go for a smaller amount and try to get it now, maybe we could write it in there somehow. But I don't know what you mean. I don't think we could change it later. I'm not sure if that's what you're saying, Mike, but I don't think we could take 18% and say, hey, if we don't end up giving it to businesses, then later we're going to give it to something else. I don't think it is going to work like that.
I think that perhaps I'm oversimplifying it, but none of the projects that we're going to fund right now are going to come into the exact dollar amount requested. There's going to be some that are a little over and some that are a little under. So I guess I'm, thinking about it. The EDC is going to request $300,000. What we're asking you to do is earmark $300K for the EDC. We want you to immediately disperse $200,000 in small business grants. And when we get through that, we're going to come back to you and explain to you how we're going to burn the rest. But in the meantime, we want you to earmark that for us. And so we basically phase the approach because, I agree. We don't want to say, well, we'll figure out what we'll use it for, but give it to us now. But if we can't get rid of the 200,000 because the businesses aren't requesting the money, then, I think we just ask for it in two phases.
And I think that if you ask for it in two phases and make the request now, speed is important. And that was the reason for setting up the commission the way they set it up. So use that and say, I know that speed is important to this group. So we would like to make the following, and then propose.
Do you think that with the reporting, Mike, do you think I agree with what you're saying? I want to do like a tentative earmark of all of it. And then later, but nobody seems to be wanting to like do anything, like make any, that's why I suggested, let's just start with 20% for each of the 5 categories and then say, oh, we're not going to do this category. Okay, where are we going to, we're not going to do broadband. Where do we want to put that 20%? Do we want to put it at revenue? That's why I thought at least have a starting point is a good idea. But I guess what I'm wondering is, I feel like the way that it gets reported will be big. Like once they disperse it, that part needs to get reported. So don't, you know what I mean? It's the process is important. If they're dispersing us 10% now and we don't take the 8 until later when everything else is all set aside and then it's in the spreadsheet and then it's actually getting reported on. So it would be really a 10% disbursement now and an 8% earmark is why you're like, yeah.
Perhaps my impression from some of the comments, from other folks and Erica was that they would basically want to do that, some tentatively earmark things because they realize once you go out and get a bid, it may fluctuate a little bit. So I think that's the way to go. So, do you want me to work on basically a very short narrative, or do you want to put something together? I think that if we have something concise and ready to go, we can get them to allocate that first chunk at the next meeting.
The whole 300, you think 18%?
I think at least the upfront portion for the business grants.
Yes. Agreed.
Okay. I think so too. So, I mean, I was thinking that we could get somebody to, if we just needed some type of proposal, honestly. So you're talking about proposing 200 now and then reserving the other 100. Let me see what that is. Hold on. 200 of
indicating the commission's intent to seek a $300,000 allocation and then basically make a straight request for a $200,000 disbursement.
That's 12%. That's 12%. Come on, guys, give us 12%. That's what I'm thinking. I agree with you, but what do you think about what I said about they're going to want to know how? I feel like some members may be concerned about how we're going to follow up with the businesses. They may not allocate it for that reason. I feel like if we can answer that question, they'll allocate it. But if we can't answer that question, they may not.
So I work in East Windsor, and East Windsor is the one that did the $1 million erase grant like 4 months ago. So I will have an answer for them at that meeting as to what that whole process included. They gave out $1 million in the same amount that we're requesting, so to a lot more businesses. So I will have an answer for them at that meeting as far as what the obligations are based on a community that's already given out this money, so that they can, but the commission already, the document the commission already developed says that the business owners have to agree that if there's a
Right.
question for auditing purposes, they have to be able to provide the documentation to the town to show that they spent the money as required. So, I'll worry about the information, what Donna tells me they need for reporting from the town is what we'll get,
Matt, go ahead. You had a question?
No, I was agreeing, and is it possible that we can get copied, Mike, on that, the material that you share with the commission, the ARPA group?
Yeah, so Sam, do you want to write the memo or do you want me to write the memo?
I was wondering, you're talking about a memo that kind of lays out what you were just talking about, be the request, basically. I don't really have super time to write the memo, but I would like to collaborate on the memo. I know you could mostly, is that possible that we work on it a little bit and beforehand, or?
Well, I would probably ask John to
I
do
feel
it
like
because-
even if you write it, I feel like it still should kind of come from me as the member here. So,
Right.
but the only reason I say that is because it's just, I'm very, very busy at my current job and I have a lot of stuff coming up, with some required documentation for a new job situation that I'm in.
Yeah, I'll have John do it.
Although there are 3 weeks, so.
Yeah, I think it's best, I'll have John do it and send a draft to you. I don't want to write it as the zoning agent, so I'll have him do
Right,
it.
okay, all right.
Sounds like a plan.
And then
Great,
you're
and
gonna have him in that memo answer all the questions that you laid out the other day, right? How will it be managed? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Right, and we don't have to do anything or make a motion because we've already done it. Great. Best of all worlds. Okay, so we've got the 2022-23 budget request for the commission. Last year's budget, I had sent that around, and that was $19,280 for the commission. I would propose to submit that same budget. And also, I was thinking about a sign. I was thinking that we could fund some signage in town. Maybe put in a small amount there, $3,000 for a sign. I think we really need some more visibility in town. You see the brand new signs that Mansfield has put in. We'll do something a little bit less, but I think probably more. So I would propose a budget of, $23,000. And Mike, I don't know if you had any comments on the budget.
No, I mean, I think that that sign would be good, and having some of that so that we can kind of improve our gateways. I can certainly help with a memo if you need me to.
Great.
So you're proposing a 20% increase? You said it was 19 to 2023?
Yep.
All right. Is that fairly normal in budgeting? Sorry, guys, I don't do that often.
No. Well, I think it's a specific request. It's not,
Okay.
so our budget isn't really going to increase. We're going to ask for the budget and then the sign. So it's a flat budget, but it is asking for a sign. Matt, I know you have a comment.
No, I don't. I was going to make a motion We have a chat request. Did anyone query Christina about the previous Welcome to Willington sign committee?
Mm.
Apparently there was a previous committee.
There was, and it never came to, to fruition, unfortunately. But, we would allocate the money in the budget, and then we would go through a process whereabouts, we want some community involvement. We're going to go query Christina about, the end result of that committee, and, use all the available resources to get this done.
Great.
Matt, you had a motion?
Oh, I was going to make a motion that we request 20, I can't remember the exact amount, Rick.
23,000.
23,000 for our budget for this year, and that'd be submitted to Board of Finance.
I second.
All in favor, raise their hands.
Aye.
Okay, great. Any other items? Anybody present to speak that wants to talk to us out there?
Wait. Mike, you didn't raise your hand. Does that mean you're abstaining?
He's not on the commission.
Oh,
Rick,
sorry.
who seconded that motion? I was looking at my notebook when I heard the
Bill.
voice.
Bill.
Bill, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another
Okay.
question.
You go right
What
ahead.
about our giant spools of thread next to the sign that we talked about?
So that's going to be, an interesting discussion about what the sign should look like, where we
Yeah.
should put them,
I
how
loved
big
that
they should
idea.
be, but, I think as we're moving forward, we're seeing so much, positive movement in town. I think this really is just, a little bit more of that.
I like that whole gateway idea, though. Can I ask another question if I promise not to tell
Mhm.
if anybody
Yep.
knows the answer? Who bought the old river and rail? It just keeps saying a restaurant's coming soon. Do we know what restaurant's going in there, Rick, at all, or?
Not yet. No.
No, okay.
Mike, go ahead, can comment on it, but there was somebody that had come in and they were going to start a restaurant. That didn't happen.
Oh, I was just curious because all you see is that
Yeah.
big giant sign and we're missing out. Like there's no place, like you can go to Toast, but aside from that, you got to go to like Ashford to have breakfast.
Yeah.
There's nowhere here anymore. Well, Matt, it's true, right?
I
I mean, I'm just
know.
saying it's nice every once in a while. And I miss Pat and Katie. It was nice every once in a while to go down there on a Sunday and,
Yeah.
have breakfast with your family. That's all.
I used to go there all the time. I agree.
Can you go to
know.
Hilltop?
No,
Don't they have breakfast?
thank you. No, thank you. No, I'm
You
good.
can come to my house, Cheryl. I make the best.
Thanks,
egg
Sam.
sandwiches.
Well, Rick does too, so maybe you guys can collaborate. You could come over here and
Yeah.
you both can make me
We'll have a new
breakfast.
business. We'll have
There
a new
you go.
business.
I love it.
All right, guys, thank you. Anything else?
I'll make a motion, Rick, to adjourn if there's nothing else at 7:24.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Thank
See you
guys.
later. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
See you, everybody.